Hello.
Hello, guys.
Hey, Remington. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Looks like we have quite a few people looking at the document right now, but just haven't joined the meeting yet. So I'll give it a few minutes.
Sure.
Can everybody see the document on my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year.
Hello. Happy New Year. All right, so we're a couple minutes past time, so we can get going. Yeah, welcome everybody to the Argo City and Rollouts community meeting. I'll be your host for today. My name is Remington. Yeah, we can go ahead and get started. A quick reminder, if everybody here could just add their name to the list of attendees on the Google document, I will go ahead and throw this link in the chat if you don't have it already. There we go. And with that, I will hand it off to our first presenter for today. So our only agenda topic, it looks like at the moment, is going to be Monocle demonstrating some improvements to the Argo City YAML editor. So yeah, let's take it away. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll just frame it a little bit, and then I'll hand it over to Vito to do the actual demo. Basically, KubeShop, we're an open source company, and we have one of our projects, Monocle, which is a tool for working with Kubernetes manifests and YAMLs. And we started engaging with the Argo team, I think at KubeCon, and figured out a good way for us to contribute to Argo would be to inject some of our YAML magic or love into the YAML editor that you currently have in the Argo web interface. Vito's been working hard on getting that done so we can get that contributed in the next release. So it's around validation, it's around syntax highlighting, it's around a bunch of things to make it easier to work with your YAMLs and get them right if you're editing them from inside Argo. So I think that's probably enough framing for me. I'll just hand it over to Vito. Obviously happy to answer any questions before or after.
All right. Thank you for the introduction, Ole. Let me try to share my screen here. So we can you can ask questions about the implementation after, but I always like to show first what exactly we tried to make. And so we saw a few places where you have the editor. And one, of course, is when you open like a resource here, so you can go to the live manifest. And as you see, some curly yellow lines have appeared. And those are for validation that we run on resources. So we have like a whole area of rules that are related to security that can be used to find small mistakes. In this case, I've enabled all of them, but you can configure it. And you see that some of them are missing here. If you go to the security context, and you see that there is a run as group and run as non-root. But for example, the run as group is missing, and that is indicated by this rule here. You could also drop all the capabilities. For the rest, most of this deployment actually is quite well up to date. There is some small thing here. For example, this should be a string. So we also do schema validation. The nice thing is that once you have the schema validation, it's once you want to edit, is we can use the intelligence of that schema to provide autocomplete like you're used to in any editor like Visual Studio Code or something. It gives you like a sample value. If I would write something wrong here, again, you get the curly line that it should be an integer, and you can correct this to make sure that there are no mistakes while you're quickly trying to edit the resource. So of course I could save this if I want to. But that's for the resources, and there are plenty of tools that can validate for deployments and so on. But where Monocle gets really interesting is when you try to work with custom resource definitions. And if you go, for example, to the app info, then you also have the manifest pane where you could edit. I have to cheat a tiny bit here because for this to work, I actually have to make it a complete compliant Kubernetes resource. So if I would edit this and quickly add in metadata, so if it would look like this, then we can, from this information, extract the schema again, and we get the same benefits. So here we can now start working and play with automated. I don't know these things quite well because I don't work with the Argo CD resources so often, but I can here try to really get things done. If I don't know something, I can get the documentation from it, and it will give me the information I need to make these small edits right from within Argo CD. We talked a bit about security validation on top of this, but what is also very nice about Monocle is that you can write community plugins or plugins that anyone can use. And they are interesting for a project like Argo. We went quickly through your docs, and we saw that if you write a destination, you're not allowed to combine using both the property of server and name. So as you see here, Argo's applications destination are mutually exclusive, so you're not allowed to do this. If I would again remove the server, this works well again, and vice versa. So it's quite easy for, if you have these custom resource definitions, to add your validation. We could show the code in a bit, but this was like 10 lines of code to do in our framework to add these kind of validation rules. And that's the main gist of the improvements to the editor. So it's really like the being able to make these quick edits and still having the confidence that you did it correctly, and not trying to just press the save button and hope that it will work. Are there questions here?
I can just add a couple things. So the policy-related rules are the same as in Trivi, which you might be familiar with. So we're using they've open sourced their whole rule library. Obviously, Trivi in itself is open source, so we're kind of using that. So these aren't rules we've come up with ourselves. So they're well trusted, etc. We could obviously have these kind of validations and rules also for Argo rollouts, CRDs, for any CRDs that you would like to support more or less natively. I think lastly, we talked about this also previously. We're looking to you to maybe help us implement the rules that you think would be relevant for you users. You guys obviously know Argo much better than we do, and just like Vito said, we went through the documentation and kind of extrapolated some basic rules from there. But maybe if you feel like, if you see kind of a common mistake that users of Argo are making, or something that they often get wrong, or policies that they should be doing things in a certain way, let us know, and we're happy to add corresponding rules to the editors. It's as Vito said, it's really easy, and they're open source. Anyone could kind of go in and modify them and improve them if they wanted to. So that's kind of an ask back to you guys to make this as rich and powerful as possible for your end users. We'll provide all the plumbing under the hood. I think that's what I wanted to add.
Can those edits be saved?
This will now fail because under the hood it expects it to be a spec, so this will fail, but because it's not a correct spec. But I think if I would do it like this and remove this again, I would expect this to work.
Okay, my point is the lines of everything is pulled from Git, right? So in this case, if the manifest in my Git repository still have whatever wrong spec that I have there, and if I edit in Argo CD directly and save here,
Yeah, I think he's asking a little bit more of an Argo CD question. So that editor, basically it edits the live state of your cluster rather than the state in Git. So it will save to your cluster, but it will not go and commit back to Git. Does that answer your question?
Right. Now,
Well-
now this, I mean, I liked it, but my point is, will it not be against our rule that, you know, everything goes from the Git, right? So everything is audited from Git. Every change that goes into the cluster is done in the Git repository and it is audited in the Git repository. So if we say that now we are bypassing Git and doing the changes directly in Argo CD.
So this is more of a convenience for, you know, quickly debugging resources or adding an annotation, for example. So you're absolutely right that if you do go into Argo CD's UI and edit a manifest directly, you're bypassing all of the benefits that you get with GitOps. But this is a feature that exists in Argo CD today to be able to edit these manifests. And the guys at Monocle are basically adding more validation on top of it to avoid, if you are going to go in and debug a manifest by editing it directly through the Argo CD UI, the enhancements that the guys at Monocle have added now are adding another layer of protection on top of that. So you can validate that your schemas are correct before you actually go and push them to the cluster. But you are right. That's a risk that you have to take when you're editing manifests directly in Argo CD.
Okay, so my follow-up question, if no one has questions, so is there a way to, you know, release this feature or to take away this feature from the end users? Say, for example, if I'm implementing Argo CD, now in my RBAC, is there a way for me to suppress this feature from releasing it to my production environments?
Yeah, so a bit about how the implementation works. The nice thing about it is that the way that Monaco works. So we use the Monaco editor, which is what Visual Studio Code uses under the hood. And so actually all these changes that I showed you, it's just like 5 lines of code. The only thing that I did was install this. This has a bit of indentation that changed, but all I did was install our dependency, which is Monaco Kubernetes, should be in here somewhere in the dependencies. So this one I added, and we made a small tweak to the Webpack configuration. And so it would be, I think, possible to tweak this out or to be able to change this worker. So it's not that we've been adding or adding a lot of bloat to the Argo CD project. We thought it was important that indeed, should you not want this, that you could change it around a bit or not. Yes, Oli, I see you raised your hand.
Yeah, I'm guessing 3 that you want to maybe disable the editing altogether, not just specifically the features that we showed here. So,
right, yeah.
And maybe, I don't know if that's possible today, if you can just disable the possibility to save your changes, regardless of the editor.
Okay.
Question for Remington, I guess.
And one follow-up question, and I'll leave the floor to others. So is there a Argo CD notification that I can get, or is this event, is it something that I can get into my notifications so that I can understand if there are edits happening in the system? Or can we capture that event whenever someone do that edit?
Not as it stands today, unless Michael or Leo, if you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I'm aware, no, that doesn't exist at the moment.
I work in a past in setting up Argo CD in a company, and we configure Argo CD as a read-only tool. So it is possible to configure in a way that you cannot edit the live state from the UI. The thing is, there's no feature to disable the button, so users will still see the button, but as soon as they click save, this won't be allowed to be done in the cluster. So that's how it currently is implemented. We can always improve this and add a feature flag or anything like that.
As far as alerting goes, you have two paths. One, you can alert on the app going out of sync, which I think is something provided by Argo CD notifications. You can also monitor the logs, which will log each time a resource is edited. And then you can notify on that logging.
Oh, so when we edit this, the sync will show that it is out of state from the Git repository, is it?
If that resource is represented in the desired manifests, then yes. So for example, if you edit the replica count for a deployment, then the application will go out of sync. If you edit, say, an annotation on a pod, well, that pod's not represented in Git anyway, so the application is not going to go out of sync, so you won't be alerted.
Okay, so we still have few things that we might miss.
Okay, just a few words from my side. Glad to see you guys around. Hi, Ole. Happy to see you
Hi,
guys,
Leo. Nice to
your
see you.
faces. Yeah. Excited to see this feature in Argo CD. My question is mainly basically how it works. I'm just curious to understand how it works for managing CRDs, right? Because this is not provided by so CRDs are all over the place, so anybody can define a CRD. So how the editor get new definitions to know dynamically how to complete and validate the state?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it's custom resource definitions. There's two aspects to it. It's like the validation, and it is the schemas. Since your question is more oriented towards the schemas, I can answer that first. So at this point in time, it's indeed correct that you need to get the schema itself, right? So for this demo, I made it available for Argo CD exactly for this CRD, but it becomes more interesting once you want other CRDs as well. What we have for our own tool is a way to register these in Monocle itself. Then in the application, you have the possibility to just define the custom resource definition schemas or give a URL for them. What we're also working with is that you have like plugins.monocle.com. I don't know the exact paths, but here we're working on like collecting a database of schemas. We now already like gather them for the standard ones. I think this might work if I do it like. No, okay, I guessed it wrong, but it's something like this.
Okay. So and then the editor, okay, and then the editor will come and access this URL and get the schema.
Exactly. So the way that works is quite similar. Again, we took inspiration from how Red Hat does it with the Visual Studio Code extension, which is slightly different than Monaco, but we took inspiration from that. And the way that it works is that you have the language server of YAML running within the web worker, and that web worker can then request a schema. Now, if you have like normal more YAML-based tools that are unaware of Kubernetes, then you can just fetch the resource. But what we're able to do then is actually we have our resource parser, we inspect the content, and we can determine which kind and API version it is. From that identifier, try to get it. And for like all the Argo CD custom resource definitions, we're going to add them then to that CDN that I just showed before. We might find other ways to do that, make it configurable. I think that configurability use case is not so interesting for Argo CD. It might be, but at least then you have the option to configure it. And of course, you have the fallback of our own CDN that will hopefully grow over time. Is that clear? And then for
And you mentioned about the language server. You have a language server running inside this editor, or is this a server running elsewhere?
No, so it is. It's actually if you go to the sources, then
so we're using the same editor component as VS Code, Monaco, not to confuse with Monocle. And Monaco has a concept of language servers, which it uses to process different languages. And so basically, we've created our own language server, which is a Monaco concept. These are not servers as gRPC or remote servers. It's more of an abstraction to language processing, and the communication protocol is, I don't know, probably Rito can answer that. So just to, the term server could be maybe somewhat misleading here, but it's something that's really, loaded separately and then plugged into the Monaco editor.
I'm familiar with the concept, Ole. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that.
The thing is, I just wanted, I was just curious to know if you have the language server running in the editor, or this was running elsewhere and the editor was communicating with that language server. I guess it's the first, right? We probably have that running inside that JavaScript layer.
Yes, but I think it's important to highlight there that it's in a web worker, so it will not impact the performance of Argo CD. You will notice that this is ongoing. All the processing is done elsewhere. So you get the best of both worlds, actually, because you don't have the hassle of having a separate server, but you do have the benefit that it does not impact the performance and keeps your main render thread like free for Argo CD stuff itself.
Okay. Cool stuff. Thank you.
All right, cool.
Does Monocle surface field descriptions or just field names when you get like the little autocomplete pop-up?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
So our Argo CD application types have like Golang comments above each field, and it describes what the field is and does. We strip out all of that information when we generate the CRD because the CRD is massive and we're trying to make it smaller. But Argo Workflows has two versions of their CRDs, one that is just dedicated to like IDE support, so it retains all the descriptions. If Monocle surfaces those descriptions, I think we'd want to follow Argo Workflows pattern and create two CRDs.
I think the descriptions is what you see in the pop-up. This descriptions pulled from the schemas for each property. So if you could keep them in there, that would kind of provide extra help for people editing or working with YAML.
Cool.
But basically you're saying, Michael, that the one we publish are having this descriptions stripped out from the CRD. Is that right?
Definitely for application set, and I think maybe for application. And we've had like folks kind of want those for IDEs already for like Visual Studio and IntelliJ products. And we haven't had a use case that was compelling enough to justify the time to re-add those descriptions and do what Argo Workflows has done. But if we have something built into Argo CD that could take advantage of those fields, I think it would be worth it.
Cool.
All right. Did anybody have any more questions for the guys at Monocle? Awesome.
Is there a PR open? Is it merged?
Ship it.
Almost. I'm working on it today. The only thing I have to tidy up is that the resource schema downloading. So I did it like a bit hacky, I would say, where some schemas are still embedded in the library. Of course, we want to download that from our own CDN so that your bundle doesn't blow up. But I mean, no big showstoppers should be there anymore. The concept is proved, basically.
Cool. I think it will be for 2.6, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right?
It would have to be 2.7.
2.7 already?
Already got an RC out. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Something that just occurred to me. What if I have like OPA policies? Am I going to have to duplicate those rules in order to see those like little yellow lines in the desired manifest page, or can Monocle somehow take advantage of the OPA rules?
Wait, so you want to enable
have them in Rego, or you have them in Rego, those policies?
So I'm not, I'll be honest, I'm not super familiar with OPA. I've never set it up, but I know that there are rules that like prevent you from doing certain things.
I think you'd probably have to wrap those in a plugin, a validation plugin, and then add them to our public community repo. Happy to help you with that. So if you have rules that you would like. As I said a while back, if you guys know about rules, either Rego or OPA or whatever format, well, maybe not whatever, but common formats, will definitely try to help and make sure so they are used and honored by this editor.
Cool.
So the thing there, I understand the question now, is that the Rego policies that we have ourselves are compiled to WebAssembly, and we use them for our own validation, but we do not yet have the ability to add your own Rego policies that are compiled to WebAssembly. The custom validation that I showed you before, it's with a framework built with TypeScript that has the ability to generate code from custom resource definitions. So if you have Argo CD custom resource definitions, then we generate type guards and the whole schema so that you can use it there, which provides quite a good developer experience. Of course, we in the long term want to add other strategies where you could also work with Rego, but for now these are with TypeScript. I can send you a link to the repository where we defined the plugin so you can check it out. It's
cool. What was the developer experience for adding the validation rule that's like you can't have server name and server URL for destination? Is that just a couple lines of TypeScript in the Argo CD repo?
Yeah.
Share it. Show, I
can
guess.
share it. 1 second. I need 1 minute to open it here. So
I think there would be a lot of those that like the Argo.
This is in the. Sorry. Go ahead.
I think there would be a lot of those rules that the Argo CD team would write that would be common for all users, and then folks who have like some OPA rule that maybe they want to show in the UI, they'd have to find the proper way to make that happen. But I can already think of things I'd want to add, just for base rules.
I'm almost done.
You can show it. It's on GitHub. Vito, you could just show the rule there, I guess.
Yeah, but I can show it in real time, right? I'm opening the developer mode. It is here. So if I would here, for example, say, it's still, that's a pity, it's still read only. Right, I have to toggle a feature flag as well. Yeah.
I just posted the link to the rule on GitHub. So it's not that much code.
If I go now here.
Oh, cool. Has name, has server, is valid. Yeah, that's super easy.
Yeah, and then had I known, I could have prepared this a bit better. 1 second.
There.
Yeah, it will be a bit too much work to set up now in 3 minutes. But what you can do is we have a development server. I can maybe describe it a bit in words quickly. So we have a development server, and if you want to develop these plugins, what you actually just do is open a resource like that in Monocle itself, and then you can open a developer mode. And what this developer mode does is actually, whenever you type while you're making the plugin, it will bundle it as with ESBuild, and it will send it over the wire with an event stream to our application. And since we work with the latest version of JavaScript, we can dynamically load your code in our application. So you can in real time see the validation rules that you're writing. I have a demo video about it though that we can share maybe, Ole. But if you're interested in writing a plugin, it's actually extremely easy because you can just play around as you're typing. You see the line appear in the editor of Monocle itself. And then you know that you're right or wrong, because like if you're not so familiar with the CRDs, it's easy to make a typo or something, but you immediately catch it that way.
Yeah, I suggest if you want to, happy to maybe have a breakout session if you're interested in just how to create plugins. But if you look at the GitHub repo that I shared, there are the Argo rules, and then you can use the tooling that Vito's describing to make it really a smooth developer experience building these rules.
It's actually set up if you want to show it, but maybe I don't want to hijack the whole meeting. If you're interested, I can stay 5 more minutes after and I can show you how it works.
Okay. Yeah, my main concern is where the code will live, because I think we'll definitely want to write plugins, additional rules. Then we just need to put that somewhere and make sure folks can contribute rules. But
yeah, so the rules are now in this community repo. It's public. I mean, we just launched this like like 3 or 4 weeks ago, so there aren't a lot of rules in there, but we're working on adding more. Yeah, this is.
I think
So,
you see my screen now. So we have here, this is just, the only thing is that they are at this point public, because like I said, they run in your browser. We have a SaaS application, so we also want to make sure that it's secure. We are working for private plugins as well for people who are authenticated, but for now they're just like more community based. And if you see here, this is the Argo plugin. If you go to the source code, then we can, for example, see the rule that you asked about, the app destination. So it looks like this. To implement it, you have to validate. What you do is you have a resource, you filter out all the non-applications. You can see here that this is generated from the custom resource definition. So it's not that you have to define anything manually here. You just drag and drop the custom resource definition in the directory. I think I have it here in CRDs. So there I put this one in. The moment that you then run CodeGen, then that becomes available. After that, all we do is just check whether it has a name, it has a server. If it has like either of the other, then it's not valid. And otherwise, you just give the pod. If you use this pod, then that is sufficient for us to know where it is. It also works for arrays, so you can just put like a number in here and we will properly extract the region of where it goes wrong. And to demonstrate that in the thing, I actually have the plugin here open as well. If you run npm run dev, you start this dev server that we created. It's still in beta because we're working out the kinks, but it kind of works already. If you then go to our application, so this is just app.monocle.com. I have a resource here. If I go to developer mode, which is a card that you can enable, then you already see it popping up here because I have this code. You can tweak around, turn this over on, or for example, I mean, if I make a change now to this rule, let me see. Here, for example, I just put this on the kind. Then you will see that this in real time jumps away to there because the code is immediately loaded over the wire. All right. So that's a bit the concept where you can very easily like experiment with what works for your resource. You have one that was had a problem in it. The workflow is then a bit that you take that faulty resource, you put it in Monocle, you write a rule, and it never happens again after that.
Gotcha. So last thing, and then I'll hush. The plugin, is that bundled at build time or is that pulled over the wire at runtime?
For example, this is now a development plugin, but you can also install them. I can, for example, take the NSA rule sets, open the network tab. So what you will see now here is that these are pulled in from the CDN. If you go here, then you see that this is hosted on plugins.monocle.com, validation NSA latest. So if we merge pull requests to main in that community repository, a pipeline runs that actually makes the build and it puts it then on our CDN. I think that Oli also made now a contribution to be able to put them the plugins then that you built. I mean, I could also perfectly just go here and run npm run builds. That build output, you could also perfectly put that in a directory of the Kubernetes resources that you want to validate, and then we'll read it from there. So it's a nice thing about how the ECMAScript modules work is that it allows quite some flexibility in how you actually load it. So there are different loaders.
Cool. Yeah, main thing I'd want to avoid is complicating supply chain, runtime supply chain security for the Argo CD front end. But it sounds like we can avoid that.
Yeah, it's actually for, I think for the first version, because we also to not spend, we might just embed the Argo CD plugin. That's also perfectly possible if you make a separate build. That's actually what I did now. So that just shows to the flexibility. If I go here back to this, then the plugin that you actually saw in the demo, I have it here as a separate plugin. You can just, this plugin can just be loaded in the validation service. So here you see if the configuration has the Argo parameter, then this is the custom validator that we have. You give it that object because that's all it is in the end. What we bundle is just an object, and that object is then used for validation.
Cool. Very cool stuff. Thanks, Phil.
All right. Any last questions? Okay. Well, thank you guys very much. That's super exciting. I'm very
Thank you.
excited to see that PR. But yeah, thank you guys for your time and for the demonstration. We really appreciate it. And with that, yep, of course. With that, if there are no last minute agenda topics, anybody want to bring one up? All right. With that, I think we can go ahead and conclude this month's meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we will see you next month.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.